7 Sinister Tales Revealed, Haunted Nightmares You Must Never Listen to Alone After Dark. In the heart of Willow Creek, where the streetlights flickered like dying stars, Karen knew she had to shield her children from the shadows that seemed to linger just outside their home. Once there were families just like ours, she began one stormy night as Ellie and Jake huddled, eyes wide and eager. They heard strange noises, whispers in the wind. The wind howled, rattling the windows, a serpentine hiss that wrapped around their modest two-story home. Karen clutched the flashlight as though it were a lifeline. Legend has it that every neighborhood has its darkness, and if you listen too closely, it will invite you in. The children shivered, anticipation prickling their skin. Tales of the old Johnson house swept through the suburb like wildfire. It was said that the last family who lived there vanished overnight. Parents heard their children laughing when no one else was around. One night, they found a hidden door in the cellar. Karen's voice lowered, drawing them in. Inside, nothing but empty rooms filled with echoes of laughter forever waiting. Ellie's face went pale. What happened to them? Nobody knows, Karen whispered, her own heart racing now, but people say if you go to that house at midnight, you'll hear their cries for help. Outside, the trees swayed violently, and the shadows around their home contorted weirdly, mimicking the horror brewing in her stories. From the corner of her eye, Karen saw movement across the street. Dark silhouettes gathered, heads bowed in whispered conversation. Chills raced up her spine, and she forced herself to look back at her captivated children, trying to mask the growing dread in her voice. Another tale unfolded, a warning about the hollow man, a figure said to watch from the edge of the woods, his eyes glinting like coals in the dim light. He steals children who wander too far from home after dark. Jake gulped, clutching his sister's arm. What if he comes for us? Don't worry, she said, though uncertainty gripped her. As long as we stay together, we'll be safe. But safety felt fragile, like the peeling paint on their walls. With each tale, the air thickened with a palpable tension, the walls seeming to lean in closer. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. The clock chimed midnight, slicing through the darkness like a knife. The deep chill seeped into them, and Karen could swear she felt eyes boring into her back. The tales begun to seep into their reality. Maybe it's just our imagination, she whispered, just as a creak echoed from the attic above. The children stiffened, breaths hitched, then, a soft whisper floated down the stairwell, "Help us!" It was a child's voice. Frozen, Karen's instincts screamed. She turned to the window, catching a fleeting glimpse of shadows moving furtively beyond the gaslight, an odd congregation that shouldn't be there, with long arms stretching towards the night's endless abyss. Wasn't that the very essence of the legends? A once peaceful neighborhood now tangled in secrets, the forgotten echoes of its former life creeping back into consciousness. Bringing her senses to a crescendo, Karen felt the grip of terror tighten around her heart. Something's watching us, she breathed, realization dawning like a candle flickering in the night. Desperate for answers, she peered into the darkness outside, knowing full well something was out there, lurking, waiting. Have the legends led her to the edge of a dreadful truth? The answer was bound to awaken something long buried, and she was teetering on the brink. Would the nightmares that now haunted them tear apart the fragile threads of their existence? The whisper echoed again, clearer this time, a desperate plea weaving through the air. Help us! Karen's heart raced wildly as she turned to face her children. Stay close, she commanded, gripping their hands tight. The flashlight flickered, pulsing as if to warn them of the growing darkness. Mom, I'm scared, Ellie's voice trembled. Jake shivered, eyes darting toward the attic door. The house felt alive, breathing, pulsating with dread. Let us go check, Karen suggested, though her own voice quaked under the weight of her fear. She inched toward the attic staircase, each step echoing hollowly in the silence. The air grew heavier, thick with the invisible tension of unshed fears. I don't want to," Jake whimpered, but he promptly shuffled closer to his mother. The trio climbed the staircase, the wooden steps groaning under their weight. Up and up they went, the attic door looming like a gaping mouth ready to swallow them whole. When they reached the top, Karen hesitated before pushing the door open. The hinges protested, a shriek that cut through the silence, awakening whatever lay in that darkened room. A smell of dust and decay wafted out, but amidst it lingered something sweeter, more sinister, like the remnants of a long-forgotten childhood. Inside, the attic was dim, illuminated only by the moon's feeble light filtering through a cracked window. Boxes held the weight of forgotten memories, each one a tomb of stories never told. And there, in the far corner, stood a dusty old doll, its glassy eyes staring toward them. Ellie gasped. "Look! It's just a doll." But even as she spoke, Karen felt the pull of dread tightening around her throat. "Mom, I don't like this," Jake whispered, his voice almost breaking. "Neither do I." An inexplicable sense of being watched enveloped them, so palpable one could almost reach out and touch it. "It's just a doll," Karen repeated, trying to convince herself more than the children. As they moved closer to investigate, the air chilled dramatically. The doll, once an innocent plaything, seemed to shift its gaze, narrowing as if it were aware of their presence. The whispers grew louder, wrapping around them like vines. "Mom!" Ellie pointed at the wall. Karen jerked her head to where her daughter had directed her trembling finger. On the wall, just beyond the doll, appeared marking small handprints, dusty and faded. A chill crawled up her spine, the hairs on her neck prickling. "Are those?" "Yes," whispered Karen, her voice caught in her throat. "They're children's handprints." Jake whimpered softly. What if the kids are trapped?" Hope sizzled into dread as the whispers morphed into cries, rising and falling like a horrible tide. Help us," then it came. A sudden bang from below, the sound of shuffling feet rushing through their home, echoing up the staircase. Panic flooded Karen's veins. "We have to go now." They turned to flee, but the door slammed shut, rattling against the frame with unforgiving force. The flashlight flickered and died, plunging them into darkness. Heartbeats pulsed in her ears as realization punctured through the air. "Help us," the voices called, now blending with a cold, mirthless laughter. Not again," Karen's mind spiraled, the tales she had told were crashing back against her. "Mom!" Ellie cried, reaching for her. "What do we do?" But before she could respond, a figure materialized before them, an outline of shadows coalescing into a form. Its hollow eyes shone like embers in the night. "Join us," it hissed, stretching arms that reached into the void. "Run!" Karen screamed, but as they turned, the attic walls closed in, and the whispers grew deafening. What had begun as a night of stories was twisting into a nightmare far worse than she had imagined. Was there any way out? In that moment, as the darkness enveloped them, a chilling thought clawed its way to the surface. Conversations in this town had consequences, and now those consequences were coming for her family. But were they truly trapped, or did the legends have other plans for them? The darkness pressed against them, suffocating. Karen instinctively pulled her children closer, feeling their small bodies shake against her. The air was thick with fear, echoes of the past wrapping around them like shackles. "Mom! I can't see." Jake's voice quivered, a raw edge breaking through the darkness. "Should just hold on," Karen whispered, heart pounding in her chest, each beat a countdown to the unknown. She felt around for the door, her fingers frantically brushing the splintered wood. It wouldn't budge. Why wouldn't it open? Ellie cried, tears streaming down her cheeks, the scent of decay curling at the edges of her senses. "Because it's meant to keep us in," a voice hissed from the shadows. Karen's blood turned to ice. The figure before them loomed larger, its hollow eyes sparkling like shards of glass. "Join us," it crooned again, and the whispers swelled, rushing through the attic's thick air, wrapping around them. "They're waiting. What do you want?" Karen demanded, her voice growing stronger despite the fear clawing at her throat. "We're not like them." The shadows flickered, shifting along the cobweb-covered beams. "No, you're so much more." Suddenly, the presence of the doll felt overwhelming, a cursed anchor pulling the children into the depths of despair. Karen's instinct screamed for them to escape. But escape how? The walls felt impossibly close, pressing in like a vice. "Please. Let us go," she cried out, her voice cracking. But the laughter echoed back, hauntingly melodic. As panic surged, Ellie squeezed her mother's hand harder. "Mom, I can't breathe." Time blurred as the walls creaked and moaned, the attic awakening like a beast stirred from slumber. A vision flashed through Karen's mind, of children trapped, lost in the void of this very space. The tale she had spun for her kids was more than just a night of spooky fun. There were dark forces at play here, roots entwined deep within the town's buried history. "Do you hear them?" The shadow whispered, its breath curling cold along their skin. "They call for you." At that moment, Jake started to scream. "Mom! Help! There's something behind you." Karen spun, nearly dropping her kids as a second shadow flared to life, jagged laughter making the attic tremble. "Their sadness craves peace, and their peace is your life." The words coiled around her like barbed wire, cutting into her resolve. She couldn't lose them, not like this. "Let them go," she shouted, fury mixing with fear, pure instinct driving her. She pushed forward, toward the door, slamming her shoulder against the frame. The wood resisted, the laughter twisted, becoming frantic now. "It's too late, Karen. They belong to us." "No!" she screamed, adrenaline surging as she hammered against the door. Desperation fueled her, she put everything into it. With a deep breath, she raised her voice, channeling every ounce of strength. "I will not give in. I will not lose my children." Then, a brilliant flash of light erupted in the attic. For a split second, the shadows recoiled, screeching in agony. The whispers turned to howls as the light pulsed with warmth, scattering the darkness. In that moment, the door budged, swinging open with a crash. "Run!" Karen yelled, shoving her children ahead of her, bursting out into the hallway. They stumbled down the staircase, but as they descended, a chilling realization washed over her. The laughter lingered, wrapped around them like a garish shroud. Outside, the night was eerily quiet, as if the world held its breath. They dashed toward the door, but before they could reach it, Ellie gasped. "Mom! The doll! It's watching us!" Karen turned back, her heart racing. The doll was standing upright in the attic's window, casting a wicked smile that seemed to beckon. "What do we do?" Jake whimpered. She could feel the chill of the doll's gaze drilling into her. The shadows had not retreated, they lingered just beyond sight, waiting. "We need to leave," but as her words hung in the air, the whispers returned, more insistent than ever. Help us," with the weight of impossible choices pressing on her shoulders, Karen had to confront a truth that clawed at the edges of her sanity. What if the only way to save her children was to fulfill the horrors of the past? What if they had already been marked as part of the town's dark legend? With uncertainty coiling tighter around them, she turned to flee once more, knowing they may never be free. But the chilling laughter followed them, echoing into the night. How deep did this horror run? And could they truly escape the shadows that hugged them closer with every step? The night air was cold as Karen and her children bolted from the house. Panic surged through her veins, electrifying every step. The laughter still hung like a fog behind them, a sinister reminder that they were far from safe. "Mom! What happens if it comes after us?" Jake's voice trembled, cutting through the night, but Karen shook her head, refusing to let doubt invade her mind. They had to keep moving, had to get far away, they stumbled across the overgrown yard, shadows dancing in the moonlight, but fear anchored them to the ground. The house loomed like a beast, its windows black and soulless, the attic a gaping maw filled with forgotten horrors. "Please, let us just go home," Ellie whispered, falling behind, her small feet dragging in the damp grass. Karen turned around, crouching to meet her daughter's terrified gaze. The light had flickered in her daughter's eyes, like a candle threatened by a gust of wind. "Ellie, listen to me," she said, urgency pouring out of her. "We can't stop. We need to get to the car and drive far away. We'll figure it out, I promise." But as she stood up, a chilling breeze washed over them, stirring the oppressive darkness like a living thing. The laughter echoed again, twisted and mocking this time closer. "Mom!" Jake screamed, pointing toward the path. "Look!" Flashes of movement darted in and out of the trees. Shadows were no longer just darkness, they were sinister forms, flickering at the edges of reality. The ground beneath her trembled. "Run!" Karen urged, grabbing her children's hands, pulling them forward as they sprinted toward the driveway. With every footfall, she felt the weight of unseen eyes watching, knowing they weren't just running from the house, they were being hunted. "No! No!" Ellie cried, her voice piercing through the fear that enveloped them. "The doll. It was in the window." "I know." Karen snapped, dragging them. "But we can't think about that now." In the distance, the faint sound of a lullaby drifted through the air, ghastly and sorrowful. The tune twisted her heart. Karen clamped her hands over her ears, but the melody seeped through, wrapping around her mind like chains. Every step felt heavier than the last as the lullaby echoed, growing louder, more insistent. "Come play with us, forever." It called, weaving its way into the very fabric of the night. "Mom! I can't run anymore." Jake wailed, breathless. "We're almost there." She dragged them on, fighting the exhaustion creeping through. They reached the old, rusty car. It seemed to glow like a beacon of hope. But the key? Where's the key? She searched frantically through her pockets, panic tightening her throat. "Mom! Behind you!" Jake yelled. Karen spun around, her heart dropping to her feet. The shadows had gathered, swirling into a distinct shape. The doll was there, no longer in the attic but now on the ground, its grin split wide across its porcelain face, as if savoring every moment. "You've forgotten something." The doll's voice slithered through the air, an echo of the past. "It's time to join the others." Every instinct screamed for her to flee, but the moment froze. She could feel the pull of the doll, a magnet drawing her closer. "Mom, we have to go." Ellie begged. "Get in the car." Karen snapped, pushing her children down. "Do not look back." As they scrambled inside, the shattering laughter cascaded around them. The key sat in her trembling hand, the weight of it impossibly heavy. Would she start the engine and drive into the night? Or would whatever that thing wanted come to claim them instead? With hands shaking, she fumbled the key into the ignition, but dread rooted her to the seat. The haunting lullaby filled the air, and even as the engine roared to life, the shadows closed in, ready to take back what was theirs. "Go! Go! Go!" She screamed, floodlights bathing the yard in blinding white. But the doll leered now from the edge of the light, its smile too perfect, too wide. "Mom, it's coming!" Jake shouted, as Karen pressed down on the gas, tires screeching against gravel. Even as they sped away, a shadow darted across the road, and Karen realized with horror they were not only running from the past, they were bound to it. What if the doll was never really gone? What if it wasn't he just seeking them, but ready to reclaim what had been lost? With the weight of dread pressing against her, Karen's foot pressed harder on the accelerator, but that ominous question hung in the air. Could they outrun their fate, or had the horror merely begun? The car lurched forward, scattering gravel like a warning, the engine roaring as if it too feared the shadows pursuing them. Karen's mind was a storm of panic and adrenaline. The road stretched ahead, dimly lit by the flickering headlights, but with every glance in the mirror, the darkness seemed to quench any hope of escape. That doll, with its twisted grin, was far from finished with them. "Mom!" Ellie cried, her small voice breaking through the hum of terror. "What is going to happen?" Karen gripped the wheel tighter, glancing at Jake, who was staring wide-eyed at the rear window. "We'll figure it out," she said, trying to sound reassuring. But inside, dread churned like an angry sea. Suddenly, the car hit a pothole, barely avoiding a near swerve off the road. "Hold on!" she shouted, veering back onto the straightaway, the tires protesting against the rough terrain. The lullaby lingered, melding with the sound of the engine, growing more pronounced, a siren call echoing her deepest fears. It was as if the darkness had a life of its own, wrapping around them, suffocating and relentless. "Look! That sign!" Jake pointed, panic lacing his voice. Karen squinted through the windshield. The sign was faded, barely legible, but the name of their town flickered into view: Pine Hollow. The realization crashed over her like freezing water. They were close to the heart of it all. The woods on either side were deep and endless, but the town, it felt like a trap now. "Mom, where are we going?" Ellie asked again, her voice quivering with fear. "We have to find help," Karen replied, though the certainty in her voice was wavering. But the haunting sensation of being followed gnawed at her. Glancing in the rearview mirror, she saw flashes of movement, shadows slithering between trees, catching the moonlight for just a second. The laughter echoed again, an otherworldly cacophony that clawed at her sanity. "Faster!" Jake shouted, his voice rising in terror. "It's right behind us." The color drained from her face. She pressed the gas down hard, feeling the engine strain as they flew further down the road into the night. The world outside blurred, the trees becoming streaks of dark green and black. "Mom, please!" Ellie whimpered, curled in her seat, hands grasping the edge as if holding on would keep them safe. Suddenly, the car's headlights caught something, the reflection of eyes, too many eyes, blinking like malignant stars in a field of pitch. For a heart-stopping moment, Karen locked gazes with a figure standing in the road. A tall, gaunt silhouette, impossibly still, staring, waiting. Shadowy arms extended like branches, twisting above its head. "Get down!" Karen yelled, instinctively dropping her hands from the wheel. The car swerved again, tires screeching as she barely missed the figure. A scream ripped from her lips, mingling with Ellie's as they jolted sideways, the world spinning around them. In her mind, images flashed: the doll, the attic, the hungry shadows that had awakened. Were they carrying the curse forward, or was the curse already within them? The heavy stillness outside pressed down with dreadful anticipation. The road forked, and Karen had to choose. One direction led deeper into the town, the other led back toward the woods, toward the darkness she dreaded. "I can't think," she spat, frustration boiling over as fear clawed at her throat. "They're coming!" Jake screamed, pointing again in horror. Karen felt trapped, the walls closing in, those flickering figures encroaching from all sides in her mind. She made a decision. With adrenaline-fueled resolve, she veered sharply to the right toward the woods, knowing they had to find refuge somewhere out of reach from the laughter. But even as the engine roared, the sound began to drown back to that lullaby, weaving into the air like smoke, taunting, beckoning. "Mom, I can hear them!" Jake cried, ducking lower, fear painting his voice. As they plunged into the shadows ahead, the car's lights illuminated a path, but the trees seemed to shift, their branches reaching out in a grotesque welcome. Karen's heart thumped. Had they made the right choice, or had they just stepped deeper into a nightmare that wouldn't let them go? Something moved in the rearview mirror, a flash of porcelain, the doll, now closer, running on tiny, unsteady feet. "Go!" Ellie screamed as the world darkened ahead. "Let us hurry." But the road seemed to dissolve beneath them, shadows coiling like serpents. Just as she thought they were escaping, light vanished, and the haunting laughter crescendoed, turning their very breath to ice. What if this was just the beginning? What if something worse awaited them in the woods? The darkness swallowed them whole as the car penetrated deeper into the woods, the trees closing in like a tomb. Karen could hardly see past the headlights, which fought valiantly against the impending blackness. But it was useless. The shadows danced at the corners of her vision, whispering secrets just out of reach. "Mom, I want to go home." Ellie's plea pierced the thick silence, desperation slicing through Karen's resolve. "Just a little longer, honey," she replied, forcing a calmness she didn't feel. The engine sputtered, the sound swallowing her words as its strength waned, choked by fear and fatigue. Then came a low, unsettling hum almost like a distant chorus, joining in the whispers lurking outside. It wrapped around them like fog, curling at the edges of her sanity. Karen's knuckles whitened as they gripped the steering wheel. She fought against her own panic, trying to drive through the fear clawing at her throat. "Look out!" Jake shouted, pointing frantically. Karen swerved to avoid a thick fender of branches. The unexpected movement caused the car to skid, the tires scrambling for purchase on the loose gravel. A wild shriek echoed outside, a sound so piercing it seemed to vibrate through her bones. "Stop it!" she yelled, her own voice tinged with madness. But the laughter returned, daring, mocking, as if the very night was alive, playing with them. "I don't want to hear it anymore." Ellie clutched her ears, her wide eyes filled with terror. "It's not real. It's in our heads," Karen said, though she barely believed her own words. She could feel the shadows pressing against the car with a palpable hunger, their whispers gnawing at her sanity. "Mom, please." Ellie's voice trembled, and Karen could see her reflection in the rearview mirror. Fear had painted her face ghostly pale, making her look like the doll they had left behind. And then it happened. The headlights flickered, once, twice, then plunged them into darkness. Karen slammed her foot onto the brake, heart pounding furiously as they slowed and finally stopped. Silence reigned, heavy and suffocating. She could barely breathe. "Great," Jake muttered, the frustration in his voice thick like syrup. "Now what?" As Karen fumbled with the ignition, there was a sudden thud against the car's side, making them all scream. "What was that?" Jake shrieked, fear pulsing through every syllable. The door handle rattled. Karen clenched her teeth, her instinct screaming to escape. "Stay in the car," she commanded, though deep down, she feared they had little choice. Their fate was now tangled with whatever had come to greet them. Another thud. This one was harder, echoing like a heartbeat. And then a whisper crawled into the car, slow and chilling. "Come out, come out. Turn the lights back on." Jake shouted, eyes wide, searching the darkness for signs of life, but Karen was frozen, staring ahead into the abyss, the shadows twisting like figures preparing to emerge. The air became thick as if the very darkness was pushing down upon them. I can't move," she gasped, a cold sweat drawing pearls on her skin. Suddenly, the headlights flickered back to life, and in their harsh glow stood the doll, eyes wide and unblinking, mouth stretched into a grotesque grin, as though it found their fear delicious. It wasn't the doll in the attic. It was different, alive, embodying all the nightmares they had tried to escape. "Mom! It's just a doll!" Jake yelled, voice quaking. But Karen could only stare in horror. It wasn't just a doll, it was something more, something waiting, something hungry. "Run!" Ellie screamed, her voice cutting through the terror. With a roar, the engine sprang back to life as Karen slammed on the accelerator, tires spinning gravel as they shot deeper into the woods. But as the laughter echoed around them, she wondered if they were racing into salvation or something far worse. They were not safe. Not yet. What kind of horrors lay in the heart of Pine Hollow? Would their escape only lead them further into the labyrinth of terror? As shadows loomed larger, Karen's grip trembled on the wheel. The darkness beckoned once more, and she knew this nightmare had only begun to unfold. The car roared forward, the pine trees blurring into grotesque shadows on either side. Karen tried to control her breathing, forcing her mind to focus. It felt as if the very woods were alive, reaching out to snatch them back into their grasp. But there was no time to dwell on the past. "Mom! Look!" Ellie shrieked, staring wide-eyed out her window. Karen followed her gaze, heart sinking. Shadows stirred within the trees, twisting and shifting in a way that felt wrong, unnatural. But they were also forming a silhouette with no discernible shape, as if crafted from the darkness itself. It was a movement too smooth, too fluid, and it sent chills racing down Karen's spine. "There's something out there," Jake yelled, his voice breaking the suffocating silence. "Faster, Mom." She pressed on the gas, but the car responded sluggishly. The accelerator felt unresponsive, the vehicle moving less like a car and more like a slow dance with death. The low hum from earlier returned, mingling with the whirls of laughter that teased them from the shadows. They surged down an incline, and suddenly, the road vanished into a clearing. Thick fog rolled over the ground, enveloping the car in an eerie embrace. Somehow, they had dipped into a hollow. The air grew colder, heavier, each breath a struggle against the chill that clawed at their bones. Karen's grip on the wheel tightened, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Where are we?" Ellie whimpered. Her small voice trembled, breaking through the layers of fear that clung to Karen like a shroud. I don't know," she admitted, glancing around. The clearing felt disorienting, a lost place unfurling in the dark. Piles of rocks loomed, and a shattered tree lay half fallen, as though trying to escape the haunting atmosphere. Then the lights went out again. "Not again!" Jake shouted, panic slicing through him like a knife. Karen's heart thundered as she slammed the steering wheel, desperation rising. "Come on. Please." But the car sat silent, like a predator lying in wait. The darkness around them pressed in, thick and heavy, a living entity trapping them in fear. The whispers grew louder, building into a cacophony of dread that clung to the air, thickening her throat. "Mom! Something's out there." She tightened her eyes for a moment, struggling against the rising sense of dread. "Everyone stay calm." A metallic clank suddenly echoed from the front of the car. Their hearts froze, eyes snapping toward the sound. The eerie quiet shattered by another sharp noise, the unmistakable sound of footsteps prowling on gravel. "Get down!" Karen hissed, instinctively ducking and pulling Ellie into the floor well just as the headlights flickered back on. What met their eyes was worse than they imagined. Faces pale, gaunt, and half-formed hovered at the edges of the light, eyes hollow and glinting like sharp blades. They blinked in unison, smiles unnervingly wide, revealing rows of jagged teeth. The group was as eerie as the darkness itself, each face shifting, flickering like ghosts caught between time and space. "Mom!" Jake choked, clutching Ellie closer as if they could shield each other from the terror outside. "What do we do?" Ellie cried. "I don't know." Karen shouted, fear welling as she fought to comprehend the scene unfolding outside. Suddenly, one of the figures stepped closer, limbs moving in jerky motions. Its mouth opened, whispering words she couldn't hear, their meanings lost in the overwhelming hiss of the frightening wind. The engine sputtered once more, drawing her attention before it fell silent again. The figures closed in, dark shapes that promised neither salvation nor mercy. Then something crashed against the back of the car, sending them jolting forward. "Drive! Just yell at it to go! Go!" Karen screamed, her voice fighting against the rising tide of terror. But then the chilling laughter erupted in unison, a monstrous sound that drowned out her command, chilling her to the bone. The figures were closing and she could feel them now, pressing against the hope of escape. Her thoughts raced. Was there another way out of this living nightmare? Just as her pulse quickened, a flash of light cut through the darkness from inside the woods. It flickered and vanished. Her heart raced. Did you see that? A light. Could it be hope? Or was it another trick of the shadows? Before she could answer, the laughter crescendoed, and they were surrounded, pushed against the very brink of fear itself. Karen's breath caught. Somewhere within that swirling darkness was a truth that demanded to be revealed, and their fate hung in the balance. Did they dare to follow the light? What awaited them in the heart of this horror? The laughter grew, and with it, the darkness loomed ever closer. A heartbeat passed, and the oppressive laughter faded into a low growl, a sound like shifting gravel. It seemed to ripple through the air, sending tremors through Karen's bones. She locked eyes with Jake, whose face was etched with terror, the shadowy forms pressing closer to the flickering light. "Mom!" Jake whimpered, grabbing Ellie's shoulders, his grip desperate. "What if they want show?" Karen snapped, feeling the weight of dread pressing down on them like the very fog surrounding the car. She could barely hear the whispers beneath the laughter now, indistinct mumbles swirling in chaotic rhythm around them. With trembling hands, Karen slowly turned the key in the ignition, praying for the engine to roar back to life. Nothing. Silence. The shadows danced closer, figures blending into each other, limbs twisting unnaturally. One larger shadow reached out in a grotesque motion, its fingers stretching toward the car, elongated like a grotesque vine searching for prey. The sight was paralyzing. Think. Karen breathed, each word escaping her lips like a prayer. The flickering headlights offered only brief glimpses of broken faces, visceral in their hunger. Where's that light? It could be our way out. What if it's just them trying to trick us? Ellie whispered, her small voice trembling. The momentary silence that followed thickened the tension. Then we take the chance, Karen said, clenching the wheel until her knuckles turned white. We can't stay here. Another crash, this time against the passenger side. The car shuddered violently as a deep thud reverberated, hollow and foreboding. Each heart in that car thumped in unison, fear pushing back against despair like an unseen tidal wave. "Mom!" Jake cried, his voice strained. "They're coming. Do something." Just then, a lingering light re-emerged in the depths of the trees, illuminating the fog with a spectral glow. Karen glimpsed it, bright and unwavering, cutting through the darkness like a beacon. It pulsed gently, taunting her with the promise of escape. "Get ready. On 3, we go," she said, her resolve hardening despite the fear swirling around her. 1, 2. Before she could say 3, the shadow jerked closer, fingers brushing against the glass, chilling breath fogging the window. Karen's instincts kicked in. 3. She shouted, jamming the gear into drive and forcing her foot against the gas. The car jolted forward, tires screeching against gravel as they burst into motion. But the shadows followed. She could see them, figures flanking the sides of the car, darting in and out of the headlights' reach. It was a surreal parade of horror. On all sides, they blinked, those grotesque faces watching hungry and sinister. "Don't look. Just focus on the light," Karen screamed, heart racing. She maneuvered with wild, precise intent, steering towards the faint glow pulsating ahead. As the car lurched forward, she felt hot breath brush against her cheek so close, she could almost feel teeth, yet the light grew nearer, illuminating the path ahead. What if there was safety beyond it? What if it was an illusion? The laughter morphed into enraged cries, a chorus of anguish and anger as they sped toward the luminous refuge. Just beyond it, Karen could make out silhouettes, a clearing, perhaps. Was there more to see? More than just an ending? Then she slammed the brakes, heart dropping as the car skidded to a halt just inches from the wall of trees that framed the clearing. Before her lay the light, and in it, shapes began to take form. She squinted, barely able to make them out through the fog. Monsters," Ellie whispered, fear evident in her voice as the light flickered, dimming ominously for an instant. "Hold on," she shouted, feeling a surge of adrenaline. "We have to get." Suddenly, the light flickered out completely, plunging them back into darkness. The sound of cracking branches filled the air, accompanied by guttural sounds rising from the depths of the woods. Karen's breath caught in her throat. They were not alone. Whatever had been waiting all around them was now advancing, drawn to their sudden stop. What do we do now? Jake's voice was a ragged whisper, raw with terror. Run. We run for the light. Karen spat, barely able to keep the fear from consuming her. As she flung the door wide open, unaware of what awaited them, an otherworldly howl pierced the silence, chilling them to the core. Shadows lunged forward, and in that moment, Karen realized they had two choices: face the lurking horrors of the forest or plunge into the unknown light. In that instant of decision, the air vibrated with a new sound, echoing a promise that left them thrumming with dread, the promise of more than just survival. Were they stepping into salvation or an even deeper horror? The darkness breathed heavily, waiting. To be continued. Karen bolted from the car, her breath hitching in her throat, sending shivers through her entire body. The late-night air felt heavy, oppressive, as if the very trees conspired against them. She could hear the crunch of leaves beneath her feet, a sound much too loud amidst the chaos. Jake and Ellie followed, stumbling close behind, their frightened faces illuminated by the flickering glow that threatened to vanish. "Mom, hurry!" Jake cried, panic lacing his voice. She could see him, eyes wide, darting fearfully into the dark woods behind them. Ignoring the ache in her legs, Karen sprinted toward the clearing, desperate for both safety and answers. Shadows writhed amongst the trees, seeming to twist and reshape with each frantic heartbeat. They were coming, she could feel it in her bones. The silhouettes of the grotesque creatures teetered at the edges of her vision, darting in and out of view like nightmarish phantoms. "Stay close!" she shouted, glancing back to see thick darkness spilling from the woods like ink, ready to swallow them whole. The clearing came into focus, and with it, the light flickered once more. It hung in the air, glowing with an otherworldly energy, casting long shadows on the ground. Karen felt a draw, an unnatural compulsion to reach it, to plunge into its realm. If it was salvation, she could almost taste it. "Mom!" Ellie screamed, yanking at her arm. "What if we don't have time?" "Go!" Karen snapped, pushing the children ahead. Her voice cracked under the weight of urgency as panic surged within her, igniting her protective instincts. Each step felt like they were wading through sludge as they drew closer. But with each stride, the guttural howls grew louder, seemingly celebrating this desperate escape. Was it hope they heard, or a sinister taunt? Then, out of the corner of her eye, a figure emerged, a short, hunched silhouette with elongated limbs and a face twisted into a snarl. Karen felt her heart drop as she recognized it as one of the hideous creatures from the car, drawn to them like buzzards to a corpse. "Run!" she roared, adrenaline coursing through her, propelling her forward as she charged toward the light. Ellie and Jake stumbled, their breaths mixing with terrified whimpers, but they pressed on, racing toward the glow. The last few yards felt endless, each heartbeat echoing like a war drum. They were almost there. Almost out. With one final push, they broke through the dense underbrush and burst into the clearing. Light engulfed them, dazzling and blinding. Every raindrop of hope splashed against their fears. But as soon as they reached the boundary, an icy chill swept through the air, snuffing out the brightness like a candle meeting water. The light pulsed once, twice, and then it faded, leaving them surrounded by an inky blackness deeper than before. What happened? Jake gasped, clutching Ellie's hand, panic straining his voice. I don't know." Karen stumbled backward, heart racing. Images flashed in her mind, memories of laughter clawing at the edges of her sanity. "We have to find another way. There must be another." The ground beneath them trembled, a quaking roar echoing through the air. From behind, the shadows howled in unison, growing closer, fingers reaching, hungry eyes glistening with anticipation. "Where do we go?" Ellie squeaked, tears spilling down her cheeks. Suddenly, a new sound pierced through the chaos, whispering low and dark. A voice terrifyingly familiar. "Welcome, you shouldn't have run." Karen's blood ran cold. It was a voice that could only belong to one person. One thought rippled through her mind. But what she didn't know was that this time, things would be different. The echoes mixed with the growls, their combined fury becoming a tempest, a promise of something darker bubbling from deep within the forest. "Mom, what do we do?" Jake's panicked words cut through the rushing fear. At that moment, with shadows circling like vultures and an ominous voice promising doom, Karen faced the reality the worst was yet to come, and it was only just beginning. To be continued. The swirling darkness pressed in on Karen and her children like a suffocating blanket, a wall of shadows threatening to engulf them. The melodic whispers crept closer, their intentions seething with malice, a chorus of children's voices calling, pleading, "Join us, be with us, stay close," Karen urged, her heart hammering against her ribcage. Fear coiled in her gut, raw and unrelenting. With every frantic breath, she realized the weight of their peril. They were trapped in the folds of some unknown nightmare, and safety was a flickering illusion. The shadows around them writhed like snakes, and their bitter laughter echoed like a song of the damned. "Mom, what are we gonna do?" Ellie's voice trembled, her small hand trembling in Karen's grip. It was a question that begged for an answer neither of them had. "Look." Jake pointed into the blackness that surrounded them, eyes wide with fright. "There's something there." Karen spun around, steeling herself. In the thick fog, shapes began to form. Distorted figures, faces twisted into grotesque smiles, floated out of the dark to greet them. It was as if they were not just shadows, but manifestations of their fears, the horrors her tales had birthed. "No, no," Karen gasped, pushing backward, pulling her children closer. "We need to find the light." But before she could even move, the ground beneath them shuddered again, this time more violently, as if the earth was convulsing with a life of its own. The whispers rose to a desperate crescendo. "You shouldn't have run." Then from the depths of the darkness, a chilling figure emerged. The familiarity struck her, it was the dull, but twisted beyond recognition an amalgam of childhood fears, eyes glinting with wickedness. Its grin suggested something darker than mere play, a hunger. "Join us," the doll echoed, its voice layered with that of countless children, distorted, yearning. It reached for them in a slow, sweeping motion, beckoning toward a fate they knew would be far worse than what they had endured. With instinct roaring inside her, Karen spun around, yelling, "Run! I won't let them take you." They bolted, scrambling through the blackness. The light they had seen was gone, but there had to be another way. In the chaos, she caught glimpses of other figures flickering in the shadows, lost souls condemned to lurk in the void. "Don't look back," she commanded, pushing her children forward, fighting against the knot of terror gnawing at her thoughts. Jake tugged at her hand. "Mom! I can't keep moving," Karen shouted, feeling the pulse of danger at her back like a beast on the hunt. A surge of determination coursed through her veins. She wouldn't give up, not now, not ever. They had to escape this nightmare. As they stumbled through the trees, she searched for anything resembling light. Suddenly, a brilliant flash illuminated a distant clearing, glistening like a beacon in the dark. It beckoned like a promise of safety, and with each step, it drew her like moth to a flame. "We can make it," she shouted, leading her children damn near to the edge of hope, adrenaline thrumming in her chest. If they could just reach it, they could find a way out, find help. But from the shadows behind, the guttural roar erupted again, a chorus of thunderous, anguished wails fused with laughter. "You can't escape," it cried. With desperation coursing through her, she shouted, "Trust me. We will survive." Dead branches clawed at their faces as they burst into the clearing. The sight before them was surreal. The moonlight fell softly, illuminating the contours of the landscape. There, in the center, a figure stood, old and wise, but surrounded by an aura of melancholy. The figure looked up, steel blue eyes meeting Karen's gaze. You must make a choice to clear the past. Time froze as understanding washed over her. This was the crux of it. These beings, the darkness, were the echoes of the town's history. To escape, she had to confront it, acknowledge what had been lost. Your children, they are the key, the figure said, their voice like wind whispering through the trees. You have the power to save them. The darkness will not relent until it consumes what it craves. But how? Karen's voice broke, her heart drumming in her chest. The weight of that choice pressed against her, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Face your fears. They stem from your childhood. Speak their names, hold them accountable. The shadows can only hold sway if you allow them. Her heart surged. She needed to protect her children at any cost. I will fight, she declared, steeling her resolve. No more running. I'll face them head-on. Suddenly, shadows encroached upon the clearing, creeping closer, hissing in fury at her determination. Stay behind me, she urged Jake and Ellie, their terrified eyes wide as they squeezed her hands. We believe in you, Mom, Jake whispered, his voice barely above a breath. She inhaled deeply, summoning strength she didn't know she possessed, projecting her voice into the darkness. You won't take my family. I will not allow it. The laughter faltered, a moment of confusion rippling through the shadows. You dare? The voices hissed, a cacophony of rage swirling around them. I dare. I'm not afraid anymore. Karen shouted, determination surging in her blood. You've haunted us for too long. You're just shadows of what once was. The spectral laughter turned into shrieks, the air crackling with intensity. The ground quaked beneath her feet as she stood firmly, embodying every ounce of defiance she had. Leave us alone. We are free. In that moment, the clearing surged with light, pushing back the encroaching darkness. The shadows writhed but began to dissipate, losing shape as light consumed their forms. The air filled with a resonant echo, every child's cry, every sob, all the fears intertwined with the village's tale. The dark forces fought, but Karen held her ground, clutching her children tightly. We are not your prisoners. You have no power here. With that declaration, an eruption of light filled the clearing, piercing through the dark, cleansing the air. Shadows screeched one last time, then vanished into oblivion, leaving only silence. For the first time, she felt their freedom. The air lightened, and the hideous grip of the nightmares that had clung to them began to melt away. The light enveloped them, warm and safe, as if welcoming them home. Mom? Ellie's voice broke through the haze, wide eyes shining with hope. Did we win? Karen knelt beside her kids, tears streaming down her cheeks, heart swelling with relief. Yes, my loves. We're free. The darkness can't touch us anymore. They stood together in the sacred clearing, embraced by the light, the horrors of Pine Hollow receding into the depths of memory. She had broken the spell, and now a new chapter awaited. Let us go home, Karen whispered, taking their hands. Together, they began walking toward the dawn, ready to face whatever lay ahead, united, brave, and unbreakable. As they stepped away, the future glimmered bright, cutting through the shadows of their past, and that was the last the darkness would ever see of them. Now, if you're still with us, don't just drift away. This is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. If you enjoyed this gripping tale, smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. We need to get the word out. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this wild ending. And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second. Only true fans know how crucial it is to support the channel through these simple actions. Thank you.